All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to episode 75 of Dads and Ed. We are three-fourths of the way to 100. I was trying to do the math in my head as I was driving today. I think that's late 2018, early 2019. We should hit that. So
to get to the 100. All right. I'm excited for that.
Should be good. Yeah. So when we do our scheduling, we don't know if there's going to be a Game 7 in the World Series. And we found out last night there is a Game 7 in the World Series. So we know, like many of you, if you are watching this live, that you would also like to be watching that, as would we. I see, for those of you listening to the podcast, you can't see this, but Devin is sporting his anti-LA Dodgers hat, a.k.a. the Giants hat. So looks good.
It's been good so far. Yeah, it's been good so far. Trying to keep up on the game and root on the anti-Dodgers as much as I can.
I did call George Springer's last home run to my son. I said, you're going to need to go to bed the next commercial break. And it was 3-2, 2 outs. He goes, well, this inning's about over. And I said, not if he hits a home run. Next pitch, he jacks one to left center. So,
right. Unfortunately, I just kind of shared this in a Voxer group. I kind of like Yu Darvish, He was the original Dodger. So I was kind of bummed to see him get rocked again. But I am happy to see the Astros winning. So I'll go with that.
I really do like the Astros. I think they're a fun team to watch. The game Sunday night was just amazing. Their enthusiasm is what I love about the game. And whether that's their background or just being young, but they are a lot of fun to watch. So
absolutely.
My name is Josh Allen, Tech Integration Specialist from Lewis Central in Council Bluffs. 4 wonderful kids. We actually had a 5-year-old this weekend, and am super excited. Had a great time with them, and a beautiful wife as well. Happy to be joined by
me.
Claire's back to introduce this week for once this season. So Claire, take it away.
This is my dad.
Hi, your dad.
And I have a mom and a sister and 2 dogs. And last time I was here, I think I said I was a 5th grader. Now I'm a 6th grader. And
was that 2 years ago?
What?
Was that 2 years ago?
No, I'm a 6th grader now.
Oh, okay. I didn't know if you could do that math real quick.
So yes, I will include a name. I'm not just her dad. My name is Devin Shoding. I am the instructional technology lead in Council Bluffs, Iowa for the Council Bluffs Public Schools. And as Claire said, so Claire and Grace are my two wonderful daughters, and my wife Erin, who's actually watching the baseball game tonight.
Really?
It's not something she would normally do, but we went to a Dodger game this year, so she thinks that since we went to a Cubs game last year and they won the World Series, and we ended up at a Dodger game this year, that somehow she's a Dodger fan for tonight, which is not going well in my house, but that's okay.
I will say, if the Dodgers win tonight, I will buy her Indians tickets next year.
Done. We'll go to Cleveland.
I would be all in for that. Mr. Catlett, welcome.
Howdy. Sorry, I'm going mobile tonight, it looks like.
That's all right. Go ahead and introduce yourself as you give us a tour of your house.
All right. It's Frank Catlett here from Kansas City, Missouri. Development executive for Apple. I've got 5 amazing kids and a beautiful wife.
Awesome. If you'd like to check in with the show at any time, you can connect with us at Dads and Ed on the Twitters, hashtag Dads and Ed. Email us anytime, dadsanded@gmail.com. If you missed part of the show, check out the website, dadsanded.com. Subscribe in iTunes or Google Play just by searching Dads and Ed. As far as I know, we're still the #1. Well, we show up first when you search for Dads and Ed. And we're a proud member of that Education Podcast Network. Check them out at edupodcastnetwork.com. Because it is Game 7 of the World Series, that's our water cooler. It's happening right now, 5-0 Astros. We're actually going to skip the water cooler part for a number of reasons, mostly because we want to get back and watch the game. Not that we don't love you guys, but we'd rather spend more time with Jennie Magiera, who is our guest this evening. So we're going to get right to that here in just a second. My dad moment of the week. I mentioned that over the weekend we had a 5-year-old happen in the house. She is super excited to be 5. One of the privileges that comes with 5 in our household is you get to go to a Nebraska football game. Now, before Devin starts laughing about that, I actually didn't know if she would want to go. Like, her sister has been twice and is just not a fan. But this coming Saturday, I talked to her about it this morning. This coming Saturday, she gets to go to her first Nebraska football game. She is pretty excited. I don't think she knows what she's in for, but I'm excited for that little rite of passage with the 5-year-old. That's our rule in the house: is you got to be 5, and all the other kids don't turn during the season. So it was kind of weird to have it happen right now, and we happen to get tickets. So that's where we're going to be.
Nice.
Catlett, what do you got?
Well, for me, I have to say that within my new job, I've had the opportunity to kind of just be a little bit available here and there when I'm not traveling. And it's just been kind of cool to be able to walk the kids to school and sometimes pick them up. And on the walks, just having conversations with them and, just kind of being present with them. And I didn't have that advantage before, so I'm kind of blessed with that now. And have really enjoyed that the last few weeks as I've been digging into this new job. And certainly there's times where I'm gone and I can't do that, but I'm taking advantage of the times that I am. And it's, certainly even more often than I had in my previous job. So just kind of enjoying those moments of before school, after school kinds of things, maybe taking my son to preschool, who started this year for preschool. So I'm kind of feeling lucky to be able to do that, So I would say that for me has just been my kind of dad moments that I've really enjoyed the most.
Very good.
That's awesome. Yeah. Mine will actually be something from today. My Grace, my oldest daughter, who's 13, she's in 8th grade, and she participates in show choir, which, I think if you had asked me or my wife a few years ago if she would ever be somebody participating in show choir, we've said no, and mostly because she's kind of an introvert, a little bit shy, but she's really enjoyed that the last 2 years, and she found out today she had tried out for a solo as part of their show choir show, and she earned that, so she will be performing a solo during their show. So we're pretty excited for her, and I think she was pretty pumped up for that as a kid who's kind of a little bit shy, a little bit anxious about getting in front of people like that, to do that. Not that we had any doubt that she could do that, but that was pretty fun today. It's fun to get the text from her, in the middle of the day that she earned that solo. So that was pretty cool today.
Yeah, definitely hopping up on stage is not something that I do easily.
Yeah.
So any of those kids who can do that, hats off to them.
Yeah. And like I said, if you had have asked us a few years ago if she would be, performing a solo during a show choir event as an 8th grader, I think we both would have laughed. And not because she isn't, talented enough to do that or whatever, but just because of that whole idea of getting up in front of people was not something that she was probably going to do. So, like I said, it was pretty cool. And it was obvious in her text message to us today that she was pretty pumped about that, pretty excited. So it's always fun to see your kids kind of reach one of those goals that they're trying to get at. So that was pretty awesome day.
That is awesome.
Hey, Kat, how much are you embarrassing the kids as you're walking them to school? Like, are you like full on like Hamilton singing as you're going down the street, or you play the low key cool dad?
Yeah, I'm pretty low key. They still like me at this point, so it's kind of cool, I think, at this point.
You don't want to ruin it too soon.
Right.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, it is that time of the show where we clean up our act, because we actually have a guest here who is going to bring up the IQ of the show exponentially. We are pleased tonight to be joined by Jennie Magiera, Chief Program Officer for the EdTech team, and Corwin, best-selling author of Courageous Adventures. Man, I was really hoping I could say that word without stumbling over it, so I apologize. Tonight, Jennie is sponsored by the Chicago Cubs. The Cubs are the official baseball team of the Magiera household. So, Jennie, welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Have you ever had the Cubs sponsor you for any other like speaking event?
No, this is. I wish my husband was listening. I think he just left the living room down there so he could leave me alone for this. I wish he had heard that.
We do. Tell him to go check out dadsanded.com. So tell us a little bit about yourself. You mentioned your husband. Do you have animals that roam?
I have a dog. I have a miniature schnauzer who I think is sequestered away with him somewhere, watching The Walking Dead.
Oh,
Yeah.
So boycotting the World Series because the Cubs are not in it this year?
Yeah, I think so. It was pretty. We were at that last game against the Dodgers, and it was really painful. It was the quietest I've ever seen Wrigleyville walking home. It felt a little bit like a funeral.
Well, Jennie, if you wouldn't mind. Oh, Josh, yep.
No,
If
go
you
ahead.
wouldn't mind, we were talking a little bit about the book earlier, and I know Josh mentioned it in the intro. Can you tell folks a little bit about the book if they don't know anything about it? I know that I've seen it and we've heard a lot about it. Can you talk about the book a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. I actually think I have a copy of it somewhere on my desk. Hold on. Under all
I
the-
will. Let me just say, while you're looking, when we interviewed Chris Lehman, he turned around and picked it right up. So good job for having it right there.
Sorry. I have all these other great books on my desk that aren't my book, but I found it under those. So
Well, hopefully you've already read yours.
yeah, I've read it once or so. No, so it's basically the book that I wish I had when I was starting out using EdTech as a teacher and then also as a coach. So I wanted to think about like problem-based learning for teachers. And when I first started trying to use technology, I was trying to figure out how to get better at the tech, and I realized that wasn't really the right fit for me. What I needed was to identify what the challenges were in my classroom, and then to say, like, if I had 37 fourth and fifth graders in a split grade classroom and 45 minutes to teach them math. And so, like, differentiation was a beast, and it was really hard for me to figure out, like, how do you teach so many kiddos with no time? And so like that was a challenge I had, and it had nothing to do with tech. It was just like, how do I physically get this done, like without bending the time-space continuum? So I wish someone had like said like, okay, let's take that challenge and look for innovative ways to solve it. Another one was parents like did not like returning my phone calls. They didn't like I felt like they changed their number to avoid me, but they were just also changing their phone numbers. So like parent engagement was a challenge. And then like another obvious one was like getting on grade level content for different kids' needs and as juxtaposed to ability level content. So, a fourth or fifth grader doesn't want to read a kindergarten level book, even if that's their reading level, because it's like about like, today I went to school and brushed my teeth and lost my tooth. And they're like, well, I'm 10. So I get that this is where my reading, this is where my reading level is, but the content level was not great. And so without like a ton of money or knowledge or resources, I was really stuck in a lot of those places. Technology, as you guys know, and as I'm sure your audience knows, creates a lot more opportunities and breaks down a lot of walls. So the way I have this book kind of set up is the first bit is about like getting your mindset on, right? And like putting on your innovation hat and like getting yourself, your kiddos and your space and your colleagues in a place where you're ready to go. I have this whole section of something that I call a gripe jam, where like you basically get to complain on Post-it notes, and then you do a protocol sort, and then the rest of the book is set up where it's problems and potential solutions. So like each section has a problem, like so many problems, so little time, and then it breaks down a bunch of ideas for how to address that problem using innovative tools. So the rest of the book is kind of problem solution, and so again, it focuses on the pedagogical problem rather than tools. Yeah, so that's the book.
I'm impressed that
it's frozen.
Yeah, well.
Am I?
No, you're good. But give me just, before you ask the next question, Brent, I just have to say, for those of you that are listening to the podcast, so as Jennie's talking, she can flip through her book without Post-it notes and tell you exactly where things are. So highly impressive. She has read that book.
Yeah, I might have even written it.
Go ahead, Brent. Sorry.
One thing while Brent thaws out. Well, he thaws out. You know, you mentioned in there the challenge of communicating with parents as one of those challenges of being a teacher. You know, getting people to respond and being able to share with them. What are some ways that you ended up doing that you found effective? Because I know that there are plenty of teachers I work with that try all kinds of things to do exactly that.
I think there's a lot of different ways. Some of it could be using like ed tech resources like Remind. Class Dojo has a really great parent communication tool. Obviously, Google Classroom has a great parent guardian resource as well. But also rethinking things like newsletters. You know, newsletters can be digital, but they can also be paper, but they can also be both. And so I had parents who were really unwilling to meet me online, but when I sent home paper newsletters that said like, for more information, check out here. And they were like, and I have to use the internet, but I want to know more. It was a great Trojan horse to like get the idea in their households. And then they were incentivized because they did want more and they did want to check something out.
Yeah, awesome.
Jennie, I read the book, of course, and I just want to say it's awesome, and have always admired everything you've done, from the work that you do, the speaking you do. Tell us a little bit about how things are going with the ed tech team.
Thanks, Brent. They're great. It's been amazing for me to be able to work in so many places at once. I always would tease my kids that when I created little video playlists that I was cloning myself so I can be everywhere in the classroom at once, which was like terrifying for them. But now I feel like I'm literally everywhere. This is the first time in my life I haven't worked for a school district as an adult. Well, that's not true. I worked at Steak and Shake in Ponderosa for a while in summers between teaching. But my first time after college as a full-time job, not working for a school district. And like at first I was like, oh my gosh, you know, am I going to get to see kids? Am I going to get to work with teachers? But the beautiful thing about EdTech Team is we work in schools and with kiddos and teachers everywhere. So I got to be, you know, like in Iceland, in Reykjavik, last 2 weeks ago, in a room full of principals. And fun fact, at principal conference in Iceland, they do sing-alongs at the end of the night, like totally sober, just for fun. They like pass out like little books of 80s and 90s Icelandic pop hits, and they all like put their arms around each other and sing live band karaoke. So like I got to talk about like education with Icelandic principals one week, and then be in a school talking to kids in mainland China the next week. And I'm able to really see the different parallels between different educational systems, bring that home back here to the US where I live, but also to help broaden my understanding of like what can happen and can't happen. So in like a small community like Iceland, where they have a little over 350,000 people across the island, it creates different parameters and understandings of what's possible. And that community aspect builds, a lot more opportunities for people to communicate. And so it gives me a lot of hope for like building PLNs in the US and thinking about how to scale it. So I think it's given me a lot more breadth of understanding what can happen and the possibilities, and seeing it from the 10,000 foot view. But what's beautiful about it is I'm not just at that high view. I get to like see something and then like dig deep into a school and work with it. And that's a lot of the work we're doing with like Dynamic Learning Project that we're partnering with Google and Digital Promise. So like getting into that work in like 50 US schools, I'm able to like be in it and then like come up high and see more ideas. So it's been fun kind of zooming in and zooming out.
Yeah, it's been awesome to follow you, online as you do some of those things. I did see I believe it was an Instagram post that you had of all the principals singing, and my initial reaction was the same one that you had as you were talking, like, what is happening here? One of the other things that we want to talk about, because we do talk about parenting and we do talk about education in general. Recently, you went public with some of the struggles that you and your husband have had around having kids. Talk a little bit about why you felt it was important, because that's not a subject that many people share and are open about. But why did you decide to start sharing about that?
I decided because for two reasons. And I talked about this a bit in the ISTE keynote. I had seen an article on Facebook about why Facebook was making us miserable. And it was talking about how, we all have that friend or family member who seems to be living the perfect life, and everything they put on Facebook is just so wonderful that you hate them and hate yourself a little bit too. You're like, why is my life not that perfect? God, I'm failing. And then you're like, and I hate that person. Why is their life so perfect? And then it just like creates this vortex of misery. But what is the reality is that they're curating their life. They're choosing what to put online, and that they have struggles that they're not sharing. And as I thought about that, I realized that, and I audited my own Facebook page. I was like, what do people think my life is like? So I went through and tried not to like know my life, but just look at it. And I was like, oh my God, I'm that awful person on Facebook that people are probably like, God, I hate her. She's always in Iceland and like singing with principals and going to Cubs games. Her life is so perfect. And that's so not true. And so I made a promise to myself that next time I had a struggle, I wasn't going to hide that. I was going to share that publicly too. And it just so happens that my husband and I had been having at that point a 6-year struggle starting a family. And that like it was really coming to a head where we had a fork in the road and we had to make a decision. And I was really frustrated because I was afraid about the decision we were making, and I didn't even know if I wanted to, but I didn't really know anyone who had gone through like that level of fertility treatment, and I didn't know who to call or who to ask. So I decided to put it on Facebook, and I was like, maybe like one person I know has done this. Like someone else in the world has probably had to go through this and have this surgery and do this treatment and blah, blah, blah. So I did. And as soon as I hit post, I regretted it. And I was like, well, like, I can't believe I shared that online. Everyone's going to judge me and think like I'm a broken person. And, like I had all this like self-doubt. But, and I shared this in my ISTE keynote, like dozens and dozens of people came out of the woodwork who I thought had no problem getting pregnant and just like had their kids like super easy peasy lemon squeezy, like all these like fertile myrtles and dynamic dads coming out of the woodwork were like, no, man, like we actually went to the same clinic you're going to, and like it took us this many years, we had this many failures, and et cetera, quack, quack, quack. And I'm like, oh my God, like all these people I didn't know about had the same problem. And I've been living, like feeling really isolated for 6 years and feeling like I was alone and not knowing I could talk to people. So I was like, I'm going to keep talking about it. So like people were thanking me on Facebook, like, thank you for saying something. Like this is the first time I've ever talked about this out loud. And like my 6 kids, like had, struggled with all of them and this and that. So I decided, you know what? I'm just going to keep talking about it. And so, we went through I had a surgery, then we went through a round of IVF, didn't work, went through another round of IVF, lost 8 embryos. That was really awful. Had another surgery on Monday. So, was that 2 days ago? Surgical drugs, by the way, are awesome. But like what I'm finding is like I'm trying to play a balance because I don't want to go too far the other way where I'm like, wow, my life is so hard. But I also feel like by sharing my journey, and I've talked to some other folks about this, like I have a couple of friends who are younger than I am and who are just starting this journey, or maybe the same age or older, and they're like, I really appreciate you like explaining what you went through, because then it's less mysterious for me. So I'm just trying to be really matter of fact of like, this is what I went through, this kind of sucked, this was great, and then demystify it and make it less taboo for people to feel like they can talk to each other.
See, I think that's an interesting. We've had that conversation just about social media a number of times on the show and with guests that we've had about this kind of dichotomy of it's a great place to create community where we didn't know community existed. But also this idea of like, okay, how much is too much and how much is not enough? So I think it's really fascinating to listen to you talk about something, very personal. And I think you're right. I'm sitting here thinking, yeah, like we had similar, it wasn't as bad, but it didn't go perfectly for us, early on. But that ability to create even a little bit of community around something bad like that seems like the really great part of social media, I think, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Absolutely.
Very cool.
Well,
Yeah, well, and I know, Jenny, when I read that, my thoughts went to some of the struggles that I went through in my first marriage, and having to do some of that as well, and contemplating different options, and eventually leading to adopting my first son. And so, you know, my heart went out to you, and I was just kind of like, I just kind of admire everything you've done. And that's just like one more thing. We're in the realm of just being transparent. And I think that that's something that I've been kind of striving for in the realm of social media since, just in general, like you say, not always posting like all the great stuff, but what else is going on in your life that maybe isn't so great. And I found kind of similarly when I tested that theory, I guess, that, man, I had people really reaching out going, thank you so much for sharing that. And sometimes not even people that commented on the post, but it might be I walked into a school building and then they were like, man, I read your post and, you know, it was amazing. And I didn't even realize they would have read it, or, you know, because they didn't say anything in the post or whatever. So who you're impacting, good, bad, or ugly, in the realm of what's happening with you. And so, you know, you're in my prayers, you and your husband. And I think, you know, God's got a plan, and whatever happens, but I'll certainly be praying for you continually.
Thank you.
One of the things I do want to recommend before we let Jenny go, I didn't realize until I was doing a little bit of research how many videos you have online. You know, you referenced the ISTE keynote, but between TEDx talks and a few other things. So between picking up Courageous Adventures and some of the other EdTech team stuff, make sure to also browse some YouTube, because you have some fantastic things on there. But in addition to that, where are you headed next?
In the world?
Well, I mean, where can people learn from you? Or are you kind of stepping off stage for a little bit with the EdTech team stuff?
That's a good question. Actually, so speaking of, you know, my journey to start a family, I'm actually trying to stay grounded for as much of November as possible.
Good.
I'm working on work-life balance, and I was just saying to somebody, I'd been, not this most recent past 3 weeks, but a week ago, last 3 weeks, I had been in 6 countries and 10 cities in 3 weeks. Which is not super healthy. It's an adventure and it's exciting, but doesn't really like jive with the whole like let's start a family thing. So fun fact, maybe your audience knows this because his dad's in EdTech. Like you have to like physically be near your husband for most of what this trying to start a family. I guess in science maybe you don't actually need to, but it helps. So I'm going to try and stay grounded for as much of November as I can, because we're going to try a third round of a fertility treatment. So you won't be able to see me unless you want to come visit me in West Loop in Chicago, which if you want to go get a really awesome burger on Randolph Street, I will meet you for lunch one day. But aside from that, I will be at Ties in December in Minneapolis, Minnesota. So really pumped about visiting Minnesota and speaking to that crowd. I'm going to be all over the place. I'm going to be at Valparaiso University as well, locally here in Indiana. And then all over the place in January, all over the country for the Dynamic Learning Project, we're going to visit all of our regions that we're working in, supporting EdTech coaching and innovation for that program. So I will be a bit on the road, but November I'm going to enjoy sleeping in my own bed, walking my dog, and eating really fabulous burgers in Chicago.
Well, and speaking of really fabulous burgers in Chicago, you did such a great job at the ISTE keynote. They decided to move the whole conference to Chicago next summer.
Yes! When? I can find the W in June, not now.
Oh, all right. Well, we normally wrap up with some sharing is caring, but because we do want to get back to Game 7, we're going to keep it short tonight. So Halloween was yesterday, and I don't know how chocolate and sugar mix with the drugs that you were on, but favorite Halloween candy, or if you're not really big into sweets, favorite costume you saw or wore?
Oh my gosh. Well, let's see here. I'm not a big sweets person. I was still coming off surgical drugs yesterday, so I don't know. I might have seen like some Halloween costumes in my imagination, but I don't know real.
Probably way better than what you would have seen in real life.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like I'm not going to answer this question, but I can tell folks who are coming to ISTE in Chicago where to eat, which is a treat.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not.
Where should we eat? I am bringing a crew of 20 teachers. So where do I need to take them so that they think I'm cool?
So everyone take your pens out and write down this website.
Or subscribe to Dads and Ed in iTunes, and then you can play this back at the 33-minute mark.
There you go. And if you're driving, don't actually do that. That's dangerous. Don't take your pen out. But it's tinyurl.com/Jennie loves food. Jennie with an IE, Jennie, loves food. It's a Google Doc and a Google map of my favorite Chicago restaurants organized by genre.
Nice.
Yeah, tinyurl. Jennie loves food with an IE, Jennie.
Got it.
All right, Kat.
I'm going to have to go with the fact that I have currently sitting to my right, not that far, 3 buckets full of candy that I can swipe at the moment's notice, thanks to some kids. So I'm going to just go with sweets. And I got to say, I've kind of got an affinity toward a Kit Kat. So those are quickly dwindling in the buckets.
I'm not going to go with the sweet I like. I'm going to go with something we started as a new tradition this year for handing out candy. So when we got to our 100th person who visited to get candy last night, we gave them an entire bag of candy. So we gave them a whole bag of 100 grand little mini bars. So this year it happened to be, I don't know, the kid had to be probably a first grader, Spider-Man. And we gave him the whole bag of candy, and they left, and they came back like 30 seconds later and said, "We forgot to say sorry. Like, we really should have said sorry. That was awesome. These are candies he can eat." So that's kind of our new thing. When we got to 100, we gave the 100th person a whole bag of candy.
Wow.
It's kind of fun. I was looking forward to it all night. Is Josh?
Where'd he go?
Is muted.
Our fearless leader.
Josh?
I don't think he can hear us.
I know. I don't know what happened to Josh. But he has to start the show and end the show. And he's looking at us like we're going to keep going. He's unmuted.
Okay, so fun fact. I have no idea what you're talking about. However, I do get the recording of the audio later. By the way, I went to tinyurl.com/Jennie loves food. And apparently, the two of you have been having internet issues all night. Apparently, going to that website took down my audio. So I'm going to assume you guys are done.
We are.
Otherwise, I will share that tiny URL on our website. Jennie, thanks so much for taking time out of your schedule to join us tonight. Looking forward to seeing you next summer. And for the rest of you, we will be back in 2 weeks for our pre-Thanksgiving Day show. So see you all then.
Thanks.